March 8th, 2014, Malaysia Air Flight 370 carrying 239 passengers and crew members flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing disappeared. The disappearance of this flight is now one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time. And at the time of the disappearance, the authorities launched the largest aviation search in history. Investigators performed an intricate mathematical calculation that indicated where the plane would be within a margin of error. But after an extensive search that cost hundreds of millions of dollars, nothing of the plane was found. It seems the plane vanished in thin air. But of course, that's not possible. Or is it? Tonight's guest has been going viral. He has some pretty incredible claims about what happened that day. Ashton Forbes is the organizer of MH370X, a community-led, crowdsourced investigation group dedicated to solving the mystery of MH370 and the science behind what Ashton says is advanced technology that was deployed on the plane. Ashton is a government contractor with a security clearance unrelated to anomalous phenomenon. He says he's not bound by any NDAs and everything he reveals is publicly available information. Since he's come out with this extensive research, many have tried to debunk him, however, unsuccessfully. Now there's even a payment offering by Kim.com of $145,000 to anyone who can debunk what Ashton is about to claim. And before we get to the interview, let me tell you about tonight's sponsor. Imagine this, you slide into a pair of gravity defier shoes and suddenly you feel like you're walking on clouds. It's like your feet are getting a big comfy hug with every step. Let me tell you about the revolutionary comfort of gravity defier shoes. So whether you're a busy professional, an active mom or dad, or just someone who's on their feet or constantly on the go, Gravity Defier has the perfect pair for you. All of you, UCLA Medical Center conducted a double-blind study proving that Gravity Defier shoes reduce 85% of knee pain using their patented shock absorption VeroShock technology. And for a limited time, our friends at Gravity Defier are offering an exclusive limit holiday season deal. Use code KIM30 for $30 off orders of $100 or more at gdefy.com. That is gdefy.com. Just in time for the holidays. So from work to workouts, date nights to weekends, Gravity Defier has a style for every occasion. And with this exclusive offer, there's no reason to settle for anything less than the absolute best for your feet. So again, head to gdefy.com, pick your style, and remember to use the code KIM30 at checkout for $30 off of orders of $100 or more. And this offer does expire December 20th, so treat your feet to the comfort they deserve. Ashton Forbes, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Kim, for having me, and thanks for your audience for listening in to the evidence we're going to present today.
Yeah, and if somebody's able to debunk it, they're able to get $145,000. Can you tell us about this this sort of bounty on the evidence? First off.
Yeah, I've got to give credit to Kim.com. I didn't, talk to him ahead of time about this bounty, but he came up with this ingenious idea that he would put this $100,000 bounty out there, which now has been added to by the Investigate Earth podcast. They threw in a $20,000 on it. And then a wealthy donor reached out to me personally, got in touch with them, talked to them. Turns out they've run for higher office before, and they threw in another $25,000. Now, to be clear for this bounty, you can't put in a lazy debunk and say, oh, I think I found it from a 90s video game effect. If these were hoaxed, then there's somebody out there who made them, who is a master artist, who understands physics better than PhDs, understands engineering better than many engineers. And they have theoretically are going to have a hard drive full of the information and data that they use to put these masterpieces together. You need to find that person and you need to bring that source work to us, and you can collect $145,000. So there's no excuse for these debunkers. You got YouTubers out there that have 6 million subscribers. You've got the resources to find this person. We've got hundreds of millions of impressions on social media. There's no excuse not to find them.
Okay, so let's get to the footage. Tell us about where this footage came from. Let's actually show this. So this is the original stereoscopic footage, right? So this is the side-by-side footage. And
yes.
What we're seeing we see the plane flying. So how do we know for sure that this is MH370?
Yeah, so the first indication is the only missing 777 that's out there. When you look at this satellite footage, we can see that it's light on the top and dark on the bottom, which is the same as Malaysian Airlines, which is white on the top with a red and white stripe and gray on the bottom. We can see these
Hmm.
coordinates in the bottom left of the screen. It actually changes 6 times as the perspective changes. Actually changes 8, but we can only see the coordinates in 6. Turns out that's the Nicobar Islands. This is actually the exact location where this plane was an agreed upon flight path by everybody until it turned into the South Indian Ocean, according to the official narrative, which we believe is just bunk and that there's plane just simply never went to the South Indian Ocean. In the thermal image as well, it's an exact overlay of MH370. So the pretty much the least controversial aspect of this case is that that's MH370 in there. I think most people, if even the debunkers, would agree that there's really no other plane this could possibly be. It really needs to be this plane. Even while it's turning, we've shown that it's maxing out the capabilities of a 777-200 while in descent. If it wasn't descending, then it would actually be exceeding those maximum capabilities. So what we think we're seeing here, or actually I think what we know we're seeing, is we're seeing an emergency turn where this plane is potentially trying to do an emergency landing very low. And that's indicated by these cumulus clouds we see in the background. These cumulus clouds only
Hmm.
form between 1,000 and 5,000 feet. So this plane has to be at a very low altitude.
Okay. So what is it? Why is it side by side footage? Why do we see two different images?
And there's a little bit of controversy about this side by side. Now, when we're looking at it, we do see two different angles. Initially, when I looked at this, I thought we must be seeing some duplicated footage for some reason.
Yeah, it looks like
As
it's
we
the
dug,
same to me, like
yeah,
two of the
but it's
same.
slightly different. So
Okay.
if this is, so this means that this is stereoscopic. Stereoscopic means you're looking at it with two different cameras, the same way with our eyes that we see with, two slightly different angles with our eyes where we can build a 3D
Uh-huh.
image. And that's how human beings see. Same idea with the satellites here, but these satellites are in outer space. And so the idea
Okay.
here then is that they're so far away that you can barely see a difference, but we actually have several proofs, videos that are out there that show that if you flip between side A and side B, that you see the clouds from slightly different angles, parallax effect.
Right. Okay. So where did this come from?
The footage was originally posted by Regicide Anon account, which is a UFO uploader account. Dates all the way back, according to the Internet Archives, to either March 12th, 2014, if you believe the received date in the description of the Regicide Anon video, or the published date of that video says May 19th, 2014, which is just 72 days after the event. We believe that
Okay, so
that
this was
long period of
uploaded to
time,
YouTube.
yes,
This was
uploaded to
uploaded to
YouTube
YouTube.
by this account. And the
Uh-huh.
second video of the drone was uploaded. It says received June 5th, 2014, published June 12th, 2014. So there's much less of a lag time in that second video.
Okay. So the thinking is that somebody uploaded this on March 12th, but then they hesitated on publishing and they didn't publish it until May. That's the thinking.
That's the current thinking, yes.
Okay. And then do we know where this, like, which satellites were that took this footage or,
Yep.
because then
So
it would look at this and say, oh, it's clearly faked, right? That's
yeah,
what
a
people
lot of
would
people look at
automatically
that, and
think.
even I think I saw the drone footage back in 2014. We know that there's thousands of people that saw these videos back in 2014 as well. We've even been able to find a Reddit thread just as of the last couple of days that date back 8 years that describe these videos as well from two different perspectives. And we were able to reverse engineer and figure out what satellite was in the area. USA 229 is a NOS naval ocean surveillance satellite pair, not just one, but two satellites right next to each other that were in the area looking down at the Nicobar Islands at 1840 UTC on March 7th, 2014, staring right at the agreed upon flight path of the plane. Not only that, we looked through the press conferences and we actually got the Malaysian Minister of Defense asking a question where somebody asks, we know there's US spy satellites in the regions. Have you been in contact with them? And he responds, yes, yes. Pretty much giving away the game there, telling us that the United States government 100% had imagery of the plane in the area where they supposedly claim it turned into the South Indian Ocean, where we're claiming that this footage was taken.
Okay. And these orbs. So what's interesting about this footage is that there's these three orbs flying around this plane, and then the plane
Mhm.
seems to vanish. So
Yep.
that's what that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, and we dug into this. We looked through a few different possibilities of what type of event we could be seeing. First of all, could it be cloaking? The problem with cloaking is that we see this smoke or exhaust that's coming out of the back of the plane stop the moment that the plane disappears. If it was a cloaking event, you would be able to cloak potentially all aspects of the plane, but you wouldn't be able to cloak the byproduct of the plane. Then early on, I
Okay.
thought, well, this had to be annihilation, that this plane is just being destroyed somehow, deatomized to some degree.
Yeah.
But the problem there is that if we go back to high school physics, we remember that E equals mc squared, which means that every bit of mass has a huge amount of potential energy in it. So if this plane is being destroyed the same way that a nuclear bomb would work, it's going to release so much energy that it would destroy part of the planet. Certainly a lot more than we see from these zaps that we see in both videos. Now, lastly, what that leaves then is a teleportation event. Now, teleportation is a crude approximation of what we'd be talking about. I don't like to refer to it as teleportation or even a wormhole. Really, what we're talking about is a macroscopic phase conjugation, macroscopic quantum coherence. So, this plane is undergoing a phase state change. And this is the reason why these clouds nearby don't get blasted away. This is the reason why the clouds don't get sucked in, because we're not dealing with a type of black hole. We're dealing with something that is more akin to what we see when we look at the double slit experiment, which is the most mysterious experiment in physics, that there's a wave function that breaks down when we observe. And if we can reverse that to some degree in physics, then what we can do is we can have the plane move from a definitive point to a probabilistic point, essentially like cheating in a video game, where you can just move from one location to the other. Now, the engineers that I've been talking to, because I believe that these videos are real, we can explain every aspect of these videos, including the science, state that essentially what can happen here is that you can build, from a layman's term, kind of a bubble around the plane to cause it to undergo this phase state change, where then it can be quantum entangled. These three orbs can be quantum entangled to a fourth orb that can be in a different location. It can accelerate to superluminal speeds, speed of light or beyond, which is why we don't see it in the cameras, which have a fixed frame rate. It's moving so fast that we can't even see it happen. And then it's going to appear at the location of this fourth orb in potentially the very near future.
So, I mean, and I am not a scientist, I'm not a physicist, so this is very difficult for people like me to totally grasp. But just in layman's terms, so did an alien abduct this airplane? Was that what we're saying, that that aliens came and took the plane?
That is definitely not what I'm saying. And I think that
Okay.
a lot of people want to kind of be able to put down the investigation by claiming that they think the aliens took the plane. What I'll say is that when I first saw these videos, I was so blown away at what I potentially was seeing if they were real that even I thought this must be non human intelligence. It must be technology that's thousands of years more advanced than we are. As I've dug into the case and followed the evidence using the scientific method, coming up with a hypothesis, matching the evidence, trying to figure out what makes the most sense, I've come to realize that this is most likely our technology. This is US government technology on here. Some of the strongest evidence is that the people who are filming this, the big question people ask is, why are they filming? We're filming for intelligence purposes. Why is there a drone there that can't catch the plane? Because the drone intercepted the plane. Why are we filming before the orbs even show up? Because this is an operation. Why does the drone zoom out right before the zap happens in the drone video? Again, because they're expecting it. When I dug into the technology, started talking with engineers, I ended up having to create my own podcast because people wanted to talk to me about it, physicists and engineers, because they tell me we can explain this. That in my mind, what we're looking at here is we're looking at third party contractors' technology. If I had to guess, I'd say it's Lockheed Martin's technology. Now, in my mind, we can't be this secretly advanced without help. So I would speculate that there is some type of reverse engineering program out there, consistent with what whistleblower David Grush has told to Congress, who he sounds credible to me. I think it's a very high risk to speak to Congress under penalty of perjury. So I don't really have any reason not to believe him. And as I've looked into UFOlogy these last 5 or 6 years since I've become interested in it, does seem like there's something there. So,
Mhm.
that I can't say with certainty this is a reverse engineering program situation, but I do think 100% in my mind that we are looking at terrestrial human technology. And it may even be possible, although I put a very low probability, that we have actually gotten this advanced since we split the atom in the 40s. I don't think we've been doing
Okay.
nothing for the last 90 years.
So the reason why you think this is not alien and is because the fact that the cameras were there watching this as if they were looking for this event specifically, and if it was like an unknown alien event, then it wouldn't have been so obviously captured on video, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
either we got really lucky and we just happened to catch
Yeah.
this non-human event, one in a bazillion chance, or this was just an operation they were ready to go with it the whole time.
Okay. Because right now, how many cameras do we have on this event? 3? When you
Yeah. So
consider
we have at
that
least
there's
two,
2
maybe three.
eyes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, so 2 when you look at the stereoscopic footage, that could be like 2 cameras from one device, right? Looking at
Yeah,
it.
if it's
So
two
that would be
cameras,
like
then
1
it's
device.
mhm. Yeah. If it is, then it's USA 229, where we've got the sister satellite right next to USA 229, looking down, capable of taking this 3D stereoscopic imagery, and then we've got this MQ-1C Gray Eagle. We believe these are being
Okay.
connected by the SIG-INT system, where this is a signals intelligence system of basically an internet of military assets that are communicating to one another that can relay this information to AWACS, which are these radar planes that we have out there, where you've got 20 people inside these planes with television screens, and they're able to control and look at this intelligence and then relay this intelligence to leadership in military.
Okay, so, we've got 2 different cameras who've picked this up. These have been uploaded by 2 different accounts, right? Is
Same
that is
account,
that
but
right?
other
That
accounts have also uploaded
Oh,
them.
same
So
account.
Regicide Anon
Okay.
uploaded both of these footage. There could be earlier footage out there, but if there is, the Internet Archive doesn't have it. These are the earliest ones that we can find. There were later versions
Okay.
that were uploaded of both of these videos, and at least some of them are in higher quality, which would indicate that neither of them was the potential source, that there was a third party source of the footage.
Uh-huh.
And that again kind of goes to the credibility of the situation. The Regicide Anon account in it not only does it have the receive date, it also says source protected. Their other videos don't say source protected. They say source email submission. And so this would indicate that they even potentially had to be convinced that what they were looking at was real. They might not have known. And even the person that leaked the videos might not have known that they were looking at terrestrial technology. The video description is very vague. It says satellite video, airliner, and UFOs. Now, if this is somebody that knew that this was advanced US contractor technology, why wouldn't they have said advanced technology instead of UFOs? And why doesn't it say
Okay.
MH370 in it?
So you think the person who leaked these videos was just somebody in the military who saw this and thought, "Oh my gosh, aliens? So I gotta show the world these, another alien sighting sort of
More than
video."
that, I think that they probably thought this is the only way we're ever going to get the truth of MH370. They had an emotional reaction. If they gave this footage to Regicide Anon within 4 days, then they were most likely
Mhm.
there that night. This has to be a U.S. military personnel. If they have two different assets from U.S. Intelligence, they would have to be very high in the security clearance and have compartmentalized access. They cropped out the drone in the satellite video. It's just off the screen to the top of the screen. They removed the HUD data in the drone video, which we believe comes from a Raytheon multispectral targeting camera. They also thermalized that. Not only did they remove the HUD data, but they thermalized it. And when they're cropping out all this information, removing this information, it seems like they're trying to minimize the damage to U.S. intelligence, but they leave the coordinates there. They want us to know
Mhm.
exactly the location of this plane. And then it would be easy to figure out because this is the agreed upon location of the craft. Now, if this was a hoax, it would have all fallen apart the moment we find a plane, right? But this isn't 2014, 2015 anymore. This is 2023, and the official search found literally nothing, not above or below water.
Yeah.
We searched everywhere.
Right, right. Although, I mean, we could still find the plane in the future, right? I mean, there's been some attempts, or some more recent attempts where they're saying that they know now with using ham radio signals where the plane is, and they're going to try to resume a search. At least people are advocating for a resumption of the search.
The
Um,
whisper route
so I
data,
mean,
yes,
who?
this radio signal stuff. I looked into that early on. I believed all the
Yeah.
official data must be true as well. So I went ahead and looked at Richard Godfrey's whisper route. I looked through all 300 pages of it. And early on, before I distrusted official sources, turns out if you put a minus sign in front of the north south coordinate, then the coordinates actually match up with the point in the whisper route data. The problem is it doesn't, it's like in the middle of this whisper route data in the South Indian Ocean. The time doesn't make any sense either. And that's where we found the satellite originally, that satellite's there at around 1815 UTC. And we started speculating, well, maybe this plane teleported twice, all kinds of stuff, until we just realized it's not that complicated. We were able to prove that it can't be in the South Indian Ocean, these coordinates, because if it was, the plane would then be moving north into the east. But if you're flying north into the east, you're turning right. And in both our videos, the plane's turning to the left. So what that meant is the coordinates have to be in the Nicobar Islands. It has to be going south into the east in our videos. And what this means is the whisper out data is nonsense. And that should be obvious to anyone who's looked at it like I did, because the whisper out data is like some bad James Bond writing. Oh, the plane's hugging the coast. Now it's going to make a cutback and look and see if anybody's looking behind it. And now it's going to sit there and do a holding pattern for 25 minutes. None of this makes any logical sense whatsoever. The problem with whisper
Yeah.
out data is that it doesn't work, because it's the idea of, I'm going to follow somebody with a white shirt on, but you're in a crowd of people with white shirts on. So presumably what's really happening in that whisper out data is they're just piecing together disparate information that doesn't really go together, and they're trying to match something and come up with a route. So just to fully discredit this whisper out data, we can conclusively state this plane didn't crash in the South Indian Ocean. The body of evidence completely rules it out. Now, there was no debris field found. This is absolutely impossible. If this 777 crashed into the ocean, you're going to have bodies, luggage, parts of the plane floating, spreading out in the water for miles. The debris field would be visible from space for days. It was the most expensive search, like you mentioned, in history. We found no black boxes. They searched everywhere along the 7th arc. There's nowhere else for this plane to go. The official narrative has it running out of fuel. It's not like it flew off down to Antarctica. There's nowhere else it can even go to, assuming fuel exhaustion. We have 3 different acoustic systems that heard nothing. The SOSA system, they gave the game away when they told us about the Titan sub and how they heard it pop, the Navy did, and they didn't say anything about it for 5 days. What this means is the Navy has a system where they can hear and pinpoint any acoustic detections in the ocean. They would have heard the MH370 crash into the ocean. So would have the Western Australia hydrophones, as well as the Diego Garcia hydrophones, which we've actually seen that data. And there are no acoustic detections consistent with the plane crashing into the ocean. There's even 2 radar systems that would have seen it fly in the South Indian Ocean, Indonesia's and the Jorn system, which is Australia's radar system. I've seen the ranges on those radar systems. They would have caught it there. We also had 19 passengers of the families that signed a joint statement begging the government to look into the fact that the phones were still ringing for up to 4 days after the event. One of them even proved it on TV. And then there's this active shipping route in the area. I mean, this is from Africa to Australia. There's an active shipping route. They claim the plane crashed in broad daylight. There's no witnesses that saw it. Nobody finds a debris field. You know, you can't hide all these shipping boats in terms of what they would have seen or cover this all up. And then there's 4 redundant emergency transponders that activate on crash. None of these sent any data. None of these went off. So people that claim, oh, well, we're going to resume the search and find it in this new location, I will just go ahead and guarantee you, you're not going to find the plane. But I wish them the best of luck.
Or maybe they would. Maybe they would find a plane,
Sure.
because, I mean, if you're onto something and you're exposing something, then maybe a plane would suddenly appear in that location in order to throw people off of this.
People have speculated
I mean, if
that.
what you're
There's been
saying
a lot
is,
of news articles. Go ahead.
yeah, well, you know, what's interesting about this, had you heard of Dr. Stephen Greer? I know I had mentioned him to you, but had you heard about him at, you know, when was the first time you'd heard of him and his work?
Yeah.
Have people been bringing him up?
Yeah, he gets brought up a lot. And, you know, I got interested in UAP phenomenon just as a lurker. I've not been an active investigator since about 2017. When I saw the DoD Navy videos get declassified, that's when I thought, oh, wow, the government's going to admit that these videos are real. You know, there must be something more here. So I am a very logical and rational, and I would even say a skeptical-minded person. I didn't even necessarily believe that conspiracies could be real until I found myself in potentially the largest verifiable one of all time. But I am somewhat familiar with Dr. Greer's work. And, you know, I try to keep an open mind now for anyone I talk to. I don't judge people based on their pedigree, credentials. I like to judge them based on the evidence they put forth and the stories that they put forth and whether or not those are logical. So I am somewhat familiar with his work, and I would like to talk to him and anyone else that has an open mind that wants to discuss the case, because if this is a reverse engineering situation, then there's going to be a lot of evidence that stacks up towards that.
Yeah. Well, these are the types of things he's been saying for quite some time, is that a lot of the alien sightings we think we see are not. They're actually tech that our government has and has been developing, and then, testing and using. And that his theory is they don't want that they haven't released the tech. They haven't shown the world that they have this. And he says that it's from alien tech, like that we've actually intercepted alien aircraft and that we've been able to then extract from that aircraft technology and then recreate, like you say, reverse engineer. Is that what you're talking about with the alien technology? And then try to replicate it. And he says that the reason why they haven't come forward with that is because they wouldn't want, for one, other foreign countries to know that the U.S. has been able to replicate alien technology. Because if it falls into the hands of, that would change wars, that would change everything. It's a game changer. It's like the nuke being developed all over again, but something perhaps more dangerous. And so we don't want other countries to get their hands on it. We don't want people to know that we have it. And also, it would change the industries. It would change the energy industry. It would change, if this tech gets out there, people are going to use it for good things, not just war, but for good things. And that would be very disruptive to the people who are making billions upon billions of dollars, trillions of dollars even. So it's interesting because that's what you're then saying, is you're saying, yeah, it looks alien and it probably is alien technology, but this is terrestrial. This is and you say it's the US because of the satellites that pick this up. What makes you think it's not Chinese? I mean, this is a plane going from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. Why would this kind of, these tech company, these dark kind of tech ops? I forgot exactly the term Stephen Greer uses on them. He has a particular term for these types of
Yeah, something like a black
ops.
op or something, but yeah.
Kind of,
Yeah,
yeah,
everything
yeah,
you
yeah.
said, yeah.
So
Mhm.
why would the US be over there and testing it on a passenger plane versus, I mean, that just seems to be, I
Yeah.
mean, why test it on civilian passengers? Why not test it on military people? If you want to
Yeah.
test to see if people can be transported in this way, then do it to the military. That's what they sign up for. These guys are signed up for, hey, if it costs me my life, I guess it costs me my life. A civilian getting on a plane thinking they're just going to go to Beijing, and they end up
Yeah.
somewhere else. For one, where did they end up, do you think? I mean, this tech shows us
Yeah.
what, do you have any other theory of what happened to the plane, like after the
Yep.
disappearance from these videos?
Yeah, so that's a lot of statements you put in there. I want to first of all agree with most of what you said, probably if not all of it, in terms of Dr. Greer, what Dr. Greer talked to you about. I actually watched your interview with him last night, and I would agree that probably most, if not all, of these craft that we're seeing out there might be ours. After kind of digging into this case, I also would agree that when I look at these videos, it looks like our approximation of what we are, like reverse engineered version of what these UAPs would look like. We're not looking at a tic tac, we're not looking at a saucer in these. We're looking at an orb, but this orb is a field around a smaller object that looks man-made, in my opinion. And then in terms of why would we do this, it really comes down to the motive. And we have put forth a fire scenario, which I think is a very plausible scenario, lithium-ion battery fire scenario, 221 kilograms in the cargo bay of this plane, where the FAA outlawed them in passenger planes in the cargo bays in the year after in 2015. These are very energetic events. Runaway lithium-ion battery fires are extremely dangerous. This is a lot of those batteries. So we believe that when this plane went dark, it actually started on fire. And when it goes on fire, now you have an emergency event. This is not a situation where the pilot is suicidal, where they're trying to, take out all the passengers. It's a situation where they're trying to save the passengers. They might be flying low because the plane could be depressurized. They need to give the passengers enough oxygen. We've even got 19 witnesses that corroborate this. Mike McKay, who sees it start on fire, 9 witnesses along the coast who hear loud noises the same time the plane goes dark, 8 fishermen on a boat 10 minutes after the plane goes dark, seeing it fly really low. And then our key witness in the location where we think the videos are happening, roughly around the same time, that sees the glowing orange plane flying low, descending, consistent with them battling the fire using the halon fire extinguishing devices that's releasing bromine, a halogen gas.
Mhm.
The reason why it's glowing orange is this gas is permeating throughout the entire plane, causing it to glow orange. She even sees smoke coming out of the back of the plane. Now, given this event, given this fire scenario, what we're talking about here is a potential motive where you're trying to save the passengers on the plane. But why are you risking your trump card, right? To what Dr. Greer would have mentioned is that this technology, in my mind, is certainly being hidden for reasons of national security. And we have more evidence of that we can talk about later. But like you said, a lot of people say, well, nukes can blow up the planet, right? We can destroy ourselves with nukes. We are talking about something that makes nukes look like child toys. Okay. We're talking about the ability for
Hmm.
doomsday weapons where an individual could blow up the entire planet. Even I've had reservations about continuing to disclose this information because I don't want our adversaries to know. But it's been 9 years. And if we can figure this out with a Twitter account and Google access, then China and Russia better have figured it out. And if they hadn't figured it out, they're so far behind us, they're not relevant anymore. So the motive here is the 20 Freescale semiconductor scientists and engineers aboard this plane. It's not about patents, though. That's not how the patents work. There's this conspiracy theory out there that, well, you take out these 4 people and it reverts to this 5th person. Patents don't work that way. The patents are actually in the name of the company themselves. Sorry to disappoint on that front, but I do have good news. We have a better reason. 20 people on board the plane from the same company is way too many. Most companies have a rule where you can only have like 3 or 4 people on the same plane. If this plane is doomed, or this plane is doomed, most likely, it didn't land at Penang Langkawi International Airport, flies directly over it. That was the closest airport that they go to right after. Maybe the lights on the runway were turned off in third world country at 2 a.m. Not unusual, meaning it's not safe. The next thing they would try to do is land in the ocean. It's also, though, 2 in the morning, 2:40 in the morning. It's pitch black. We check. The moon's not even up. Many of the passengers might not know how to swim because mainland Chinese do not learn how to swim at the same rate that we do in the West. When this plane
Hmm.
crashes and even tries to land in the ocean, it's going to rip apart. It's not a situation where Sully Sullenberger landing in the Hudson River. And that was actually probably a miracle that the plane didn't rip apart even in that situation. In the ocean,
Right.
it's a completely different animal. So then your motive becomes saving the passengers. You could still throw in this scenario where this is an espionage event where this fire was started intentionally because you're trying to prevent these scientists and engineers from going to China with the intellectual property. Or it could even be a weapons test where, or, a test to some degree where you're saying this plane is doomed. Let's go ahead and see if we can, save the passenger, if people will survive this type of event. Now, we've been able
Hmm.
to link these 20 Freescale engineers to the US government and defense. We found a 2005 National Security Agency report that is about the emergence of room temperature superconductive chips. And it mentions Freescale semiconductors 9 times. It says that this technology could be available by 2010 or 2012, but only if the government offers funding to make it happen. And then we also found a press release that Freescale Semiconductors had launched a major initiative dedicated to serving RF power needs of the US aerospace and defense sector. So I think the most likely scenario here is that you have your high value intellectual property on board this plane, that there was this accidental lithium ion battery fire because we didn't know how dangerous these lithium ion batteries were. And we got 500 pounds of them in the cargo bay. In my mind, you might as well have had a bomb on the plane. And you can't keep these fires out. You can put them out and they just keep coming back up again. So the crew is probably battling this for an hour, desperate to try to get the plane on the ground. That's what they need to do. And they have no hope of getting that done. We even got the Malaysian Minister of Defense on an interview admitting that this plane was unidentified, but that they somehow knew that it was a civilian airliner and not hostile. Now, that does not add up. That's contradictory. If the most likely scenario is a hijacking or even a pilot suicide scenario, then you wouldn't be able to know that it's a non hostile situation. The only way you can know that is if
Hmm.
you have communication with the plane and it's been classified. The only reason why you wouldn't send jets up to track the plane is because somebody else is already taking care of it, the United States government. Now, why is it not China? The main reason why it's most likely not China is that they were actually trying to figure out the truth as well. They put out a satellite image that was released March 12th, dated March 9th, and it looks like 3 orbs. If you just Google satellite image MH370, it looks like they were staring at our event and they were doing some spycraft to say, hey, we know what you did with the plane. Now it gets reported as being in the South China Sea. They look there, they don't find any debris in the South China Sea. It also gets so in this situation, it could be that they had some satellite imagery, but the resolution is not high enough to know for sure, but they know something's wrong. And I was going to throw this evidence out, but then we found out, went back to an old report from March 9th, the day after the plane disappeared, that China actually hacked Malaysia's government using a sophisticated social engineering hack. And what they stole were the crisis meeting minutes of MH370 and classified information related to the MH370 disappearance the day after it disappeared. The only reason why you do that is because you know something's wrong with the official narrative. And if you have satellites everywhere and you don't see a debris field anywhere, and they're trying to claim this plane crashed, of course, their intelligence is going to be very interested in finding out what really happened to the plane. So to me, that rules China out. Frankly, I don't think Russia has the capabilities or had the capabilities in 2014 to pull something off like this. So the people who are implicated is the United States government. And some people would even argue, as my last point, that, well, what if it's a psyop? Well, first of all, they never made this footage available. It's not like they're posting it on CNN and MSNBC to say, hey, everybody, aliens took the plane. No one's going to believe that.
Right.
Now they're going to go, okay, well, you did something to it, right? Everyone's going to go, this is a cover up. The United States did something. So the PSYOP angle makes no sense whatsoever. And the fact that what we see in the videos actually is corroborated by 19 witnesses, as hard as it is to believe, it is the story that makes more sense than anybody else's story by magnitude. It accounts for all of the evidence, including the tiny bits of the debris that they found. I think a lot of people don't realize some of that debris they found had burn marks on it. The parts that had burn marks had a honeycomb pattern consistent with Boeing. There was a B-77 fire suppression device that just didn't get looked into. They ignored the Maldives where this device washed up. And the flaperon that everybody says, oh, well, this flaperon proves that the plane crashed. The media reports it as being connected by a unique serial number, but it wasn't. It was connected by a non-unique serial number. Somehow, mysteriously, this bolted-on unique serial plate was missing from the plane. You can Google that and find out that as well. So the amount of deception that's gone into covering up what really happened to this plane should be a good indication that these videos are more than likely the real end of MH370.
Okay, so go back to the scientists who were on the plane. Who were they? So just walk us through this one more time. Who were they, and what tech did they carry, and where were they? Who was going to benefit from the tech?
Yeah, so they were from Freescale Semiconductors, which I coyly refer to as Freescale Superconductors, because if this is true, then it was a U.S. based
company. What kind of company is this?
Yep.
Okay.
So they make semiconductor chips, and a superconductor is simply a perfectly conductive semiconductor. So even though they're called Freescale Semiconductors, it's possible that they had been working on superconductive chips. Room temperature superconductive chips are used in quantum computers. And so they have advanced, defense purposes. We were able to link them through this NSA security report, as well as through a press release talking about how they were working with aerospace and defense. 12 of them were Malaysian nationals. 8 of them were Chinese nationals, but they're working for an American company. They're going to Beijing to upgrade the plants in Beijing and make them more efficient. That's the cover story, at least. So these are the people that we believe we can tie directly to the technology we see, because room temperature superconductivity enables all of the quote unquote magic that we're seeing on this plane, on these videos, to happen. They're the reason why we can have these orbs ignoring gravity entirely. They're creating a bubble around themselves that's essentially pulling them out of space-time, able to reduce the mass that's within that bubble to zero, which then allows you to ignore gravity. It even allows you to achieve superluminal speeds. So this is why these orbs are moving so quickly. Any object that's moving as fast as these orbs are in the videos, which is around Mach 3, will get shred to pieces from the friction. We see even one of the orbs looks like it comes out of the water, which means that these would be able to traverse through the water and through the air just like it's nothing. And that would, again, require you to be completely separated from space-time. And then what we think they're doing to the plane is just a larger scale version of that. They're rotating around that in a sinusoidal 120 degree, potentially 440 volt pattern, which could mean that what's happening here is they're both attracting to one another and repelling from one another at the same time. And then at the last moment, when they converge on the plane, is when they're triggering the singularity, this phase state change of the plane to occur, which is allowing this quantum entanglement effect, where we believe there's a fourth orb that is entangled to those three, where it's sucking it off instantly at the speed of light or beyond to that location. So did these people on board the plane know it was going to happen? We can't say for sure. Even with all this evidence, we can't say exactly where the plane went. We don't have 2 more videos on the other side that are saying, here's where it showed up. But if you want me to speculate, I would say that this plane somehow got to Diego Garcia. That's where all of the conspiracy theories said that this plane got. It's a very secretive base in the Indian Ocean. It's got tons of contracts out there for construction and dredging. But if you look at this base over the surface in the last 20 years, very little changes. It's a known CIA black site, according to a FOIA request. And there is a sighting in the Maldives just north of this base early in the morning of the plane. And the reason why people threw this sighting out is, well, the timing didn't match, the direction of travel didn't match. But all these islanders see the red and white stripe of Malaysian Airlines on a jumbo jet where they can make out the windows flying low, again, consistent with this fire event, in the near location to where we find a B777 fire suppression device wash up. So if I was a gambling person, while we can't prove it, that's where I would say they would bring the plane. That's one of the only places you can hide the plane. One of the only places you can hide it from radar as well. And this is what rules out some of these other theories out there. Like, why did it not go to Russia? Well, you have to go through, I don't know, 10 different countries' radar systems. So, some of those theories just don't make any sense from a basic logic and reasoning perspective.
Yeah, okay. So, who would have benefited from these if because I'm just wondering if there's a theory that the what caused the fire, you said it was what underneath the plane that caused the fire? It was
Yeah, so there's
lithium?
221 kilograms of lithium ion batteries that were put together
Okay.
that same day, March 7th. They missed 2 security screenings. The cargo bays are actually designed to withstand heat up to 1700 degrees Fahrenheit. These batteries can burn up to about 2000 degrees. So this is going to be an event where you've got to keep this thing out, and you got to keep putting it out over and over and over again. Otherwise, it's going to destroy the plane pretty quickly.
Okay. Is there
It
a
can't be put out.
possibility that that was done on purpose? Like, because you said it's like a bomb.
Yeah.
So is it possible that just kind of listening to everything to try to make sense of it,
Yeah.
is it possible
Mhm.
that there was a concerted effort to get rid of the passengers on this plane, that they had too much information that was too dangerous, that couldn't get to China or wherever, and that
Correct.
it
Mhm.
was that they meant for this plane to go up in flames and to not make it to its destination? And then there was
Mhm.
this operation that said, "Well, if you're gonna destroy the plane anyway, we have this tech we wanna try on it. So can
Yeah,
we
I
try
think
this
that.
tech on it since the plane's gonna
Yeah.
go away anyway?"
Yeah, there's a lot of mystery still, and I can really just follow the evidence, and that's why I think this case is so compelling. Is that's what we've done, and we've reevaluated our hypotheses as we found that evidence. Again, I would lean towards it being accidental, but I can't rule out that there's an espionage angle there where fire could have been started intentionally. All I know is
Yeah.
that this is the most likely scenario, given all the witnesses, given the very high volatility of these batteries. They most often have this runaway lithium ion battery event happen because of defects in them. And so they miss these security screenings. So it seems plausible that it could be an accidental event. If you look up the FAA and the fires and lithium ion battery fires, you'll find that they happen more than once per week, even after they've outlawed them in the cargo bays. And these are happening, above cabin with the passengers. So they're happening all the time. But yes, it could be a situation where there's an espionage angle here. Now, part of the reason why it's not as likely though is that if this plane's on fire from an accidental event, you don't need to deploy your technology to make these people disappear. You just let the plane crash into the ocean, and everybody's going to potentially die. But if there's
Right,
also
but I'm
maybe
saying
somewhere,
that this is
yeah,
an
go ahead.
opportunity to test it, because if the
Yeah,
people are gonna die anyway, I mean, if you're in the
yep,
military or with these dark ops type, programs, you don't wanna kill people really, right? I
yeah,
mean, a lot of the times when people die, it's always,
I
"Well,
agree.
it's because we had to," or something, you have to make an excuse
Mhm.
for it in order to live with yourself, just being a human. So, if that's the
I agree.
case, then it seems that they could say, "Well, this plane is already scheduled for destruction. And so since it's scheduled for destruction, we have an opportunity here to test this tech to see if we can make a passenger plane disappear or teleport it." So you think it's
Mhm.
teleported essentially with this technology. That this is like
Yeah, and this
teleportation technology.
essentially, in layman's terms, yeah, and the endothermic event could be sucking the energy out of the batteries as well, which could be stopping the runaway lithium-ion battery fire. So, in my mind, the most likely scenario is that they're trying to save these people, but the hypothesis that you put forward, the narrative that it could be a test because the plane is already doomed, and we want to see if people can survive this. I certainly can't rule that out. I'd say that's the second most likely. And I think the third most likely
Mhm.
would be that this is a way to prevent this intellectual property from getting to China because of what you were talking about, the implications is that whoever controls this technology controls the world. This is a significant step up from whatever our current technology is, from propulsion, even a step up from nuclear weapons. What this has been described to me from talking to the engineers that I've been talking to on my podcast is that this is a perfect defense mechanism as well. Anyone shoots a nuke at you, you can teleport it back to them. You might be able to just annihilate it. So, this essentially is a perfect defense, a perfect weapon. It's the ability to have fusion power. It's the ability to create cloaking force fields. It's also the ability to essentially have free energy sources, or you can create a system that uses the energy from the vacuum of space and or borrows it, if you want to think, and produces more energy than you put in. And what this all leads to, if you just follow it down, is a doomsday weapon.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, it's a very powerful weapon. I think you're being generous by thinking, well, it was an accident, and then they tried to save him. I mean, I think that's really nice of you, but to me, it just how would they know to deploy this tech on this plane that just so happened to be under an accident, and they were able to get to it in whatever speed that they were able to get there? It's like, were they waiting? I mean, I guess it's possible if they had a crew of people just sitting around waiting for one day, maybe a plane will have an event, and then when there's this event, we can go and try to rescue them. I mean, it just doesn't seem like that's what they would use this tech for, because then the people would be like, oh, some weird orb came and rescued us, and these orbs were flying around the plane, and next thing we know, we were alive. That to me doesn't seem like, that's like nice. It's a nice thought, but to me, that doesn't line up with what I think reality would be.
Yeah, and I'm optimistic. So, I totally understand that you might say that I'm looking at that side. But here's the thing about it, is that they had 1 hour and 20 minutes, which seems like it's enough time to react to this event, to operationalize the assets if they're in the area. And there was Thailand U.S. exercises that were slated to happen in the Andaman Sea 2 days later on March 10th, as when they were supposed to set to begin. So it could have been a matter of opportunity there. But to your point as well, it could also just be a situation where the plane is doomed and we're going to try this out. I think that the evidence for that is that it doesn't seem like these people were reunited with their families. A lot of the family members I've dug into and haven't necessarily reached out to because I don't want to bother them. And I can't imagine what they've been going through the last 10 years, but they've moved on. They've remarried, etc.
Right.
If your family members were returned to you, you're probably not moving on, right? But there are situations where somebody emailed me and said, I was in a dating website with one of the passengers who lost her husband. And then all of a sudden she sent a message saying, I'm being watched, I have to go, right? After they started talking about the plane. And so there is this aura of secrecy around what was told. And if you look at the Florence Luchangi, she looked into some of the cases as well. And like the nephew of the pilot was told that his uncle was collateral damage. The father, Gurain Westeros, I'm probably butchering his name, the French dad, who lost his wife and 2 children, was told that the Americans know exactly what happened and that there was 2 AWACS in the area. I would argue that the person that leaked this was on one of those AWACS that night. There was even an Indonesian police officer says he knows what really happened to the plane because his Malaysian counterpart was told, but he wouldn't say. The White House was calling Malaysia every day, which would indicate they're trying to come up with some kind of cover story. Obama goes and visits in April. First time in 50 years, the United States president visited Malaysia, spent a couple days out there. And again, the sketchiness of the Malaysian Minister of Defense. If you watch any of the interviews with this guy, worst liar in the history of the world. I say, if you put me in the room with this guy for 15 minutes, I feel like we'll have a full confession as to what really happened to this plane.
Okay, let's get into some of the debunking. Because there have been some that have attempted to debunk you and what you're claiming. This is from a Corridor Crew. So I've never seen these guys before, but they are, I think, a team of visual effects artists. Is that right? These guys do visual effects for a living. And so they're trying to say that, oh, this is just...
These are guys who have debunked the DoD Navy videos as well. So going into it, they already didn't really have any credibility. I mean, if you're trying to debunk real DoD declassified videos, then it seems like you probably already have a bias. But yeah, let's go into some of their claims.
Okay. So here's one of their clips. They said let's go ahead and play this clouds one. The clouds are not moving.
After analyzing this footage, it became clear to me that this is visual effects. The thing that stands out most to me is we go back to that first clip. Let's look at the background. Are we a satellite? Assume we're a satellite. Do you notice anything weird about the background?
Oh, that the clouds are not evolving in any way, shape, or form.
Nothing's evolving.
It's a still frame.
It's a still frame, thank you, Ren. Hey guys, how fast do satellites go?
17,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, would you jump to footage of the International Space Station?
Oh, damn!
Look, the fact of the matter is, that's satellite footage. The satellite needs to be moving. It can't be static. There would be parallax between the clouds and the ground. That's a big one.
Okay, so what do you say to that, to the clouds not moving?
First of all, it's hard to take anybody seriously who's looks like Geordie LaForge with those types of glasses on. Those are not serious people that we're talking about here. But the space station is about half the distance to the Earth as the satellites are. The system that we're looking at here is the space-based infrared system, which is a Google Earth video playback. When you're looking at Google Earth, do you see the satellites move? No, you don't. We have actually already proven twice over that the clouds actually do move. There's just very slight movement in the clouds because satellites, the information that's being sent is very far away, 1,000 kilometers away, as well as the fact that the perspective changes 8 times in this video. You see the perspective change constantly. So we're only looking at any one part for only a few seconds there. But even given all this, we were able to create 2 different videos that show conclusively that the clouds are moving. From the parallax perspective, we have 2 other videos that prove that there is parallax between the left and the right screen that we're seeing on that satellite video over to the right. So just right off the bat, these guys have already gotten 2 things wrong. It's frankly embarrassing for these guys because they've obviously put no effort whatsoever into looking into the case or anything about it. And they created this propaganda video that's meant to like get people to make it seem like a joke, which shows just dishonest intent right across the board.
Yeah, I mean, this is the video that shows up. And the way I found it was that when you go through Twitter and you actually start looking at the information that you've presented, there's always a community note often. And that community note says this has already been debunked. And then it links to this video. So here's another one that they say that the thermal shows that the explosion blast is cold and also that you shouldn't be able to see the contrails in the thermal footage. So here's what they say about that.
But you know what? That doesn't rule out that thermal shot, right? What's up with that thermal shot? Thermal cameras, like they don't have grain. It's not underexposed footage. And if there's any sort of noise pattern, notice it's a fixed noise pattern. Yeah. It's the idea of like your image is under almost like a dirty lens.
How do you make it look like it's thermal? Well, there's a filter in After Effects called Colorama. What Colorama does is it goes, all right, let's take black to white, and instead of do black to white, we're gonna fill it in with different colors along the way, a rainbow, a spectrum. And then, you know, that looks like thermal footage, it's just not accurate. However, in this case, we see the engines are hot, so maybe you go in, touch up the engines, give them a little, track some like heat points on there. One weird thing I'm noticing with the thermals is on that shockwave in the second clip, like how cold is that shockwave?
Wait, because
like is that like a 0? And so I'm confused why it's so dark when like we clearly see the engines are like hot points. We're getting the yellows, the reds.
Because if it's a super dark hole, why is it so bright there? And then in the other one, it's like a pitch black abyss.
The crazy thing about thermals is they see through mist and smoke and all that kind of stuff. If we look at this clip from Veritasium, we can't see them because photons can't pierce the fog, but that deep infrared, that long wavelength infrared goes right through it. The fog is invisible to infrared. So those plain contrails shouldn't even be showing up on thermal.
Okay, so what do you say to their claims there?
So first of all, it's not contrails. They're already wrong about that because it's too low for contrails. So that means it can only be exhaust or smoke. And you can see those things on thermal, especially if it's lithium-ion batteries having a chemical reaction as they're battling this lithium-ion battery fire. I think there's no issue with seeing the smoke. When the plane, the drone goes underneath the trail, you can actually see it stack up. You can actually see it get denser as well, which is something that would be very difficult to fake. The noise pattern is natural noise pattern because what we're looking at is an electro IR camera. It's not a thermal camera. This is the same false claim that they made when I was on the podcast last week where they tried to catch me with this video. They didn't even come up with anything new actually in this. The electro IR camera is most likely a Raytheon advanced multispectral targeting camera. The thermal layer was actually manually added in by the leaker, and it actually removes some of the detail. We were able to strip that manually using editing software. You can see more detail in the clouds. Again, the clouds do move, and you can actually see the clouds in the background that are very accurate volumetric clouds, extremely difficult to fake. The cold event, the reason why it's cold is because it's an endothermic event. It's at the lowest temperatures. This is how you are able to induce this phase transition. This is how we can potentially get the macroscopic quantum coherence event to happen, because what it does is it breaks these electrons apart from their equilibrium state and allows them to self-organize and cohere. And when they cohere into a matter wave, now you're able to allow this event to occur. The reason why it's not dark in the satellite video is because that is a false color IR. Again, it's a Google Video Earth playback. The other false statement they didn't even make in this one, but they made in the previous one, is they thought it was daytime. It's actually nighttime in both these videos. It's 2:40 a.m. And that false color IR, the whole point of it from the military perspective is battlefield awareness. If it was pitch black, you're not going to be able to do the intended purpose of the SBIR system, which is tracking missiles, boats, and planes, just like we see here. The reason why we're seeing whiter clouds at the top is there's more IR radiation at the top of clouds than at the bottom of them. So this essentially, I think, addresses every single one of their points. The last thing I want to point out is their recreation is laughably bad. They make several claims in that video that they could recreate this in 1 hour or 5 hours. It would have taken less time for them to do that than to make this silly video they made where they look like goofballs sitting on a couch. That's not how serious people address videos. If you watch me when I'm doing my work, I'm not sitting on a couch trying to make fun of people. That's just what propaganda is. So if they really could have remade it, they would have done it. It seems like what they did was they tried to remake it. They came laughably short. They realized that nobody was going to look at that video and think that they recreated it, and then decided to go sit on the couch and, make a bunch of silly claims.
Right. And they actually showed how they would do it themselves. Here's the clip of that.
The underlying footage is CGI. It's a 3D render.
On top of a still frame of clouds.
On top of a still frame of clouds, and the reason it is the particle effect, the trail from the plane. Those are sprites overlaid on top of each other, giving us this additive, stacked opacity, which creates that buildup in the highlight that we see there. If we were to do a volumetric smoke simulation of a similar trail like that, you would see that it doesn't overlap, and it has more consistent values across the whole arc, not just where it's, occluding itself. It's a CGI render.
Setting this up in 3D is almost trivially simple. You lay a path, you set an object to follow the path, you get a little triple helix for the other objects that come in, put a particle emitter for the contrails.
I'd be curious to see when this came out versus when the sprite trail tutorial on Video Copilot came out. I think it was roughly around this time. So I'd be curious to see.
Okay. I think that their most, the claim that they make that is the most viable is about the stock footage from the 90s of an explosion that looks just like the shockwave in the footage. So let's go ahead and watch that. And then I think this is the one that's the toughest to debunk from the debunkers. So let's watch this video.
Do we have this shockwave on our server?
We do now, actually.
Wait, what?
We didn't. Some people on Reddit did. This is a stock footage clip from the 90s.
Oh, hell yeah.
There's the clip from the video, and here is the stock footage.
It's
Oh, it's perfect!
Cinderella, baby.
Cinderella, man.
That's it.
Slipped right on.
Wow. An ISA, dude, an identified stock asset.
Some people have said, pixels don't match perfectly. And you know what? Of course they don't match perfectly. I don't have the exact settings that the artist used, but if you look at it, it's the exact same.
So,
okay, so what do you say to that?
Of course they match perfectly, but they don't match perfectly. I think that's a direct quote that I just heard, which is a direct contradiction. But I want to address the thing they said before is, first of all, remember they show this janky recreation. They say they could easily make it, but then they completely fail. It looks completely fake there. It's a recreation attempt. We already proved the clouds are moving in the background. So that also says that it's not still clouds over the background. The motion blur that's added, they actually add their motion blur in post. While the real video's motion blur and rolling shutter is caused by a zooming effect that increases with the amount of zoom. And the physics of their jet versus the real ones that we see, their jet is wrong. And that's one of the hardest parts to recreate. Now, according to that VFX debunk they found out, they didn't even have it. It doesn't match. They even admit that it doesn't match. And they say, well, of course it's not perfect. But, again, if the pixels matched, I always just tell people to shut down that argument. How many pixels match? And that ends it, because it would have to be a 100% match. The thing as well that we saw when they show the full effect is the full effect is not even remotely close to our video. What the dishonest disinformation attempt has been is to try to line up one frame. And even when they did the comparison there, they actually dishonestly did not compare the one frame to ours. They're actually at that point they're not comparing that single frame. They're comparing a edited version that they made where they tried to make it match. As you see from that very last event there, screenshot, where you can see the real effect, you can tell very clearly there are a bunch of different explosions and dots that are coming out of it that are not the same. So what they've done is they've tried to line up the edge as best as possible in a deceptive way to make people think that, oh, this one frame is similar. But the reality is all dispersal patterns are the same, dispersion patterns. We've been able to compare this to an ink blot. In fact, one of the earliest debunks was claiming that this effect was an exact match to an ink blot. We've also been able to compare it to supernova effects. The reality is all of these types of dispersions all are going to be able to do this situation where you can match them together. I've even got one that shows that a donut is a better match than this effect that they've put out there. So again, this is what I always like to say as a statement of fact, not an opinion. That visual effect is not in our videos. They haven't proven that it is from this. They've said their opinion that it looks similar. That's not a fact. They admitted right there that it's not a perfect match, even though they claimed right beforehand that in their opinion it was. And if anyone wants to prove me wrong, it's really, really simple. Just find the person that supposedly hoaxed these, this Banksy person who apparently hoaxed these, get the source files. They're going to have a whole hard drive full of source files and work that they did to build up to these perfect videos. And then you can earn yourself $145,000. In my opinion, people that have that amount of reach, that should be the only thing they're focused on.
So Ashton, just before we wrap this up, I have to ask you, how did you get into all of this? What is your background? What is your scientific background, and how did you get into this?
Yeah, well, I'm just a normal person. I'm a normal person put into an extraordinary situation. I'm a person that did not let this go because I saw the disinformation attempt that was trying to get these videos to go away. That's why I'm already so familiar with these attempts to debunk them, as we've already looked into all of that. I was somebody that early on, after we realized that what we were looking at was a Citrix session, logged into the actual spy satellite database on that satellite video, that we would be able to authenticate every aspect of these videos. And I never thought we would get to the point we are now, where we've been able to put together a comprehensive story that fits all the evidence and facts better than any official story to date. I come from a
but I mean,
IT
like, how did you just
background.
get interested in it? Okay, IT healthcare.
Well, I come from a health IT background. I'm an analyst, and so I think that analytical mind that I have became quite useful for this. I think that I'm a pretty good public speaker. I have a security clearance through my job, completely unrelated to this. I don't have any secret information about UAPs or anything like that. And I realized that if these videos are real, and this is the largest conspiracy of all time, then there's going to be a very sophisticated disinformation attempt to hide them. And the way that they would go out doing that is attacking the credibility of the person who's doing it. And I thought, well, it's better than a random person because I have this security clearance. So that already negates a lot of narratives they could try to set about me, right? It's going to be very difficult to claim that I'm not of sound mind. It would be almost impossible to claim that I'm like Russian disinformation or anything like that. And what I've seen from the past being interested in UFO phenomenon, people like Bob Lazar, this is how they discredit these types of people. Even my friend Salvatore Pius, who put out these, they call them UFO patents. I think that's a very disingenuous disinformation attempt. It's just advanced science patents. They try to spread false information to try to discredit those various claims. They've been trying to do it to me as well. But that's the reason why I thought I would be a good spokesperson for these videos. And I think that if you look at where we are now, we're not necessarily winning, but we're at least kind of holding them to a draw at this point. And if we can get these videos authenticated, it will shatter the faith in the United States government and many world governments, just due to the magnitude of the conspiracy and the advanced technology, which will change the world. So lastly, I want to say is my motivation here is to change the world, to help people that have nothing, and to go back to a situation where we're not as divided and we're unified. I think that the lies that constantly are being told to us have broken people to a point where no one can believe anything's real. People are at each other's throats all the time. And if we can kind of find this common purpose in making the world better with this technology, I think it can change the world for the better as well.
Well, Ashton, it's very interesting. Again, I'm not a scientist, so I just keep an open mind. I always keep an open mind. So for me, anything is possible, including alien tech, including aliens themselves. I'm very open. And in fact, I think it's kind of ridiculous to think there aren't aliens in the universe. Like, it's that big and we're all by ourselves. Like, that's the exceptionalism idea of that is So I'm open to all the ideas. I think this is very fascinating. I can't say I'm particularly convinced because, again, I'm not a scientist. I'm not an expert in this stuff. I think that anybody who watches this is going to feel that same way if they're not a scientist or an expert. They're going to say, it's interesting. It's, who knows? Like, well, and because, as you mentioned, that this would be a game changer, that this would cause people to lose faith in everything that they've known, and that this could potentially be used, this technology for the greater good. That's why I think we're not going to find out about this anytime soon. That is why I think that we won't see any evidence that these videos are 100% certain, at least not right now in this decade. I mean, maybe like now we're starting to see congressional hearings with guys carted in there saying, yeah, UFOs are real, when they spent decades and decades telling people that these were weirdo quacks, crazies that were believing that they cited UFOs. Now they're suddenly saying, well, okay, yeah, it turns out there might be actually UFOs. Sorry about all those lies and gaslighting for all of those decades. So I don't know if we'll see this come about anytime soon. Maybe in our lifetime, maybe not. But it is fascinating, and I do appreciate this conversation and all of this insight. I mean, you clearly have a lot of technical knowledge on this. Where can people go if they want to dig deeper? Because we just kind of scratched the surface of this, and I know people are going to want to be finding out, looking at the details. So where would they go?
Yeah, and just real quick, I would say I think you're right in that there's so much liability if they were to admit this is true because of all the damage that they've caused on that front. And I would agree with you that there has to be stuff out there as well. I didn't even get into the leaker today. I think we found out the person who leaked this information. So if you want to find out that kind of information, you can come find me on my Twitter @JustXAshton. You can also come to the YouTube page where I've been streaming pretty much every night because I want to be as transparent as possible. Is once again @JustXAshton. And occasionally, sometimes I'll post stuff on Instagram @JustXAshton as well. I'm not great with social media, but we're trying. So if you guys want to follow along the case, get to the truth. We're forming a grassroots movement here. And because, like you said, I don't think the government can even admit this stuff is real due to the huge amounts of liability. We're developing a movement that's going to force their hand. If we can't, we're just going to make it self-evident that everybody knows that the official story makes no sense, and that, even though it seems incredible, the story that we're presenting here makes more sense than anything else.
Yeah. Ashton, thank you again for your time. Very fascinating. We'll put all those links down below for people so that they can easily access your Twitter account, YouTube, and any other information. Thank you again for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate your time.
Well, that is it for tonight's show. Thank you so much for watching. Very fascinating. Again, I'm not saying that I 100% believe. I also don't disbelieve. I don't really have enough knowledge or to know whether or not this is real or not real, what Ashton is presenting to us. But I do keep an open mind. I think everybody should keep an open mind. I think it's very fascinating, and I think that there's enough people out there talking about this type of advanced technology, from Dr. Stephen Greer to others, that make it a plausibility for sure that there are groups working on sophisticated tech. I do kind of take slight issue with the idea that it's only, the United States has it, because to me that's like United States exceptionalism. I would imagine other nations have sophisticated tech, but again, it could just be the United States. After all, we spend all of our money on military and put a lot of investment into that. So I guess that's very possible that it's just U.S. Operations that have these types of technologies and are working on them. I'm sure they're worried that, because I would think aliens land everywhere in the world, not just in the United States. So if you're in a foreign country, you're going to get the same tech. If an alien UFO, crashed, and I'm sure they all have their own area, where they store their UFOs in like China or some other place. I don't know. I'm just keeping an open mind, and I think you should also. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been very fascinating. I would love to hear from you and your thoughts. Kim@KimIverson.com. We will be back Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Until then, I love to hear from you. Have a great night, guys. Bye-bye.